For most of season 2, we've taken a deep dive into the life and energy at Casa Fuseta, particularly around our February workation time.
In this episode, we're going east from Casa Fuseta into nature to visit a very different retreat venue.
And we're going out to visit our friend Anna Henriques, founder of the Golden Web Retreat, in the midst of nature on the outskirts of another wonderful fishing community called Fuseta. No relation.
I love this episode. There's so much in it, from the Spanish Inquisition to Jewish pirates of the Caribbean, to Portugal's invitation to Sephardic Jews to return to Portugal. And that's before we get into the history of the property itself.
And of course, I love that Anna's story includes so many golden threads of connection and serendipity.
Yeah.
And we could record the whole interview out in nature under the pine trees with the mating call of storks in the background. And if you listen closely, there's a little bonus piece that touches on my husband's eye-catching cycling outfits.
Woo-woo.
You may actually want to skip those, but if you want to have a good giggle.
We have not included that in the show notes.
Oh, actually, I have.
Excellent.
Sure. Kate and I are here on a gorgeous day in February. I think it's the 3rd of February. It's a bit cold, but we are sitting outside beneath the pine trees, listening to the birds and chatting to Anna Henriques, who is the owner, creator, founder, master visionary of a beautiful property called Golden Web Retreat, which is just outside a little town called Fuseta, which is another coastal town about 10-15 minutes east of Olhão, where Casa Fuseta is. And Anna and I met in interesting circumstances and have become very good friends. But I'd really like Anna to share with you her story of how she comes to be here, because as you will quickly gather, she has quite a broad Jamaican accent, and it's an unusual story, and I think you're going to enjoy it.
Hi. I am Jamaican, fully, 100%, but I'm also Portuguese. But I only became Portuguese a few years ago because, let me start from the beginning. I was living in New York, and for 20 years I was determined to go back to Jamaica and create a retreat on my grandmother's farm. And I set everything up. The minute my daughter was going to college, I was supposed to move there. And then my grandmother died, and the family became a bit difficult about stuff and made it impossible, actually. So I thought, I need to leave the US, and I don't know where to go, but I need to leave. And I thought, where else can I go where I can feel the embrace of people who I am familiar with in a deeper sense? And I'd lived in France for a year when I was a teenager with a family, an exchange program. And we stayed in touch. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to move to France. I'm going to move close to them. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to get papers, some sort of visa. And then I thought, no, I need citizenship. I want to be able to stay there. And I thought, how can I get that? And the Portuguese government, I'd read about 5 years before that, had created a program called the Right of Return. And the Right of Return meant that anyone who could trace their Jewish heritage back to Portugal, especially around the time of the Inquisition, could get citizenship as some sort of compensation for kicking them out. But the truth of it is the Portuguese government was in a bit of a shambles. The economy was collapsing, and they needed financing. But anyway,
we'll skirt over that
we'll
bit.
skirt over that bit. But I thought, okay, I'm going to get citizenship through Portugal and move to France. So I applied. Everything was working smoothly. I got approved. But then I had to wait about a year for the Portuguese government to give me the papers. And I thought, you know what? I don't want them to think that I'm going to go and move to France or some such place. I need this to come through. So in good faith, I'm going to visit the country. I hopped on a TAP flight, arrived into Lisbon airport, and the immigration man takes my American passport, and he says to me, "Welcome home."
Oh, that's lovely.
It was lovely, and it made me cry. And I was like, but not right then and there. But I was like, I'm not Portuguese. And I said, I was a bit defensive. I'm not Portuguese. And he said, but your name is Portuguese. You look Portuguese. Of course you're Portuguese. And I said, I'm actually Jamaican. But the real reason I had pushed back was because I'd visited in 1992 and I thought, what a dump of a country. I don't want to be here.
Not the impression they were trying to make.
No, but it was back then they were not that far out of the Salazar regime.
Yeah.
People were very depressed. The economy was terrible. So it's not surprising. But I was coming from a similar country. Mm-hmm. It was a dump of a country in 92, Jamaica that is. So I didn't want to go from one dump to another. But anyway, so I thought everywhere I traveled that trip, people were so welcoming, so friendly, and they all kept telling me I was Portuguese. And so I felt I'm looking for a place where I belong. I belong here.
Maybe I've
Clearly.
arrived, yeah.
Exactly. And that's how the whole thing kicked in.
I think others would like to hear it. Your ancestor, what was his role? What was he doing when he got kicked out of Portugal?
Oh, yes. On my father's side, both his mother's side and his father's side, they're all Portuguese, all except one. Portuguese Jews, Inquisition Jews, or Sephardic Jews, as they also call them. And they all left at different points during the Inquisition. But the last one to leave Portugal in 1609 was a man who was a wealthy merchant in Lisbon, and they wanted to seize his property. So they accused him of Judaizing, and his children all fled Portugal. He was killed, and his children fled Portugal to different spots. One child to Denmark, so there's a whole Henriques clan in Denmark, a few to the Caribbean, etc., including one of them being that pirate, if you've ever heard of Moses Cohen Henriques in a book called Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, no, that's one to put on the list. And
yes,
in the show notes.
In the show notes, yes, absolutely.
Yes, and he pulled off, along with this Dutch admiral, they pulled off the biggest heist in history of the looting of the Spanish silver fleet coming off of South America.
Seriously?
And he then ended up, that's a long story that's going into my book, actually.
Remind us of the name of your book.
My book, it hasn't come out. Which one?
This one?
This
one, the one you're writing at the moment.
The one I'm writing is called Coming Home. And it's the whole journey of coming home. And it's coming home to Portugal, but it's also coming home to myself. So it's all the ins and outs and what happens. And it's also about the ancestors, because Moses Cohen Henriques, and there's some documentation online, he ended up working with Captain Morgan, Henry Morgan, in Jamaica, and his wife is buried in Jamaica, and he was trying to create a haven for Jews, is in my book, that's my theory. And so when that of course didn't work out, that was a haven for many years for my family, and now things have shifted a lot, so I'm now coming back to his home country.
So gorgeous.
Wonderful. And what was the name of the pirate again?
Moses Cohen Henriques.
Okay.
And in fact, my name is, I grew up in King, we were always pronounced my last name Henriques. When I came here, the Portuguese pronounce, and it's their name, it's Henriques. Henriques.
Okay. And so you arrived in Portugal. You went back to Lisbon, essentially coming home for the first time in a funny sort of way. And what happens next? Where did you go? Did you come directly here, or?
No, it was a bit of a bizarre thing, because I actually had no intention really of moving. As I said, I just was trying to get the EU papers.
Yes.
And a good friend of mine, who features a lot in the book because she's just been with me through the journey, she said to me, if you're going to go to Portugal, why don't you time your trip to coincide with the Portuguese Spirit Festival. And
Didn't know there was one.
No, it only happened once. Her friend Meg, who created the Bali Spirit Festival, wanted to do the same thing here and created it in Cascais. So I ended up going there for my first trip, which of course was beautiful and it was fantastic in every way. But it also was immersing me in the spiritual community, and that's what I was also seeking. I was seeking to create that. But it took me a full year to return. It was one thing after the other before I had my real look-see trip to come and explore and find this place.
Okay, and how did you find this place?
Well, that's a
there are big
story.
smiles at the table now. I know a good one's coming.
This is it. I decided to Airbnb a place on a farm to give the farm life a shot, to make sure I wasn't having some pipe dream about living rurally, especially after 20 years in New York and 5 years in Japan, in Tokyo.
Wow.
So I was immersed in urban life, and so the idea of a farm might have just been some crazy
Fantasy.
idea.
That was very sensible thinking.
No,
I'll
it wasn't
try it
mine.
before I buy it.
It wasn't my thinking, it was my daughter. My daughter said, Mom, I think that you really need to try it out, and I'm going to find it the right place. And she found a beautiful place in Coimbra, outside of Coimbra. I was going to look north of Lisbon because I wanted something that I could afford, and I knew that the Algarve was full of tourists and expensive. That's what I'd read. And I'd been here in 92,
Yes.
and to me, I felt it didn't stand out as something particularly attractive then. And so I'm on this farm in Coimbra in July, for the whole month of July, and I'm looking around and exploring, and a lot of things were happening that were really just interesting and bizarre. But the pivotal moment was I was scheduled to go look at a whole pile of properties on a Saturday morning in São Martinho do Porto, which is a beautiful little town on the water, and I'm a half hour inland, but São Martinho is about an hour and a half from where I was staying. And I had met this woman the night before at a little gathering that the owners had put on, and I met this Norwegian woman who was very quiet, not very chatty at all. And the following morning she was walking by my window, and I waved at her and I said, "Where are you going?" I can get sometimes a bit too friendly. And she said, "I'm going to go and dump the garbage at the recycle. There are bins, they put bins all over Portugal." I said, "Would you like company?" Whether she did or didn't want, how can you say no?
It's a good opener.
So off I trotted up the hill, which was very friendly and very sweet. And on that little walk, we were chatting about our plans, and she said, "I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going down to Lagos because I'm meeting a good friend of mine." And I said, "Oh, how are you getting there?" She didn't have a car, and I'd rented one. And she said, "I'm going to take the train from some little station that she was going to walk a half hour to." I ended up taking her to drop her at this train station before I went and looked at my properties. But that morning, none of my equipment was working. I couldn't get internet. My phone was black. It was like a whole blackout of everything. And I was like, "Oh God, I don't know what to do." Didn't even know my way there. I could guess it on the highway. So I said we had to go because she had a train to catch. So off we go. Halfway there, everything comes back on.
Wow.
And including my messages that say all my meetings were cancelled. At that point, I'm cursing.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you get yakking in the car.
Yes, we get yakking in the car, and I happen to have a bag of overnight things. So we're chatting in the car, and I said, "What brought you to Portugal?" And she said, "I was here in May. We're now in July." And she said, "I'm actually the woman I'm meeting. She had invited me on this retreat, on this pilgrimage. It was a chakra pilgrimage up the eastern chakra line of Portugal." And at that point, Portugal Spirit Festival. Yes, my ears perk up and I get all excited. And I'm like, "Oh my God, that sounds so cool."
Yeah.
And tell me more. And so she told me about her experience there, which was quite magical. This whole fountain experience. And
Oh, yes.
A little info on that.
I'm just remembering that. So that was up in a spectacular hilltop town called Marvão, which is actually, we would say, is the heart chakra of the silver pillar, get this right, which goes from Castro Morim in the south all the way up to Bragança in the north. And Marvão is right in the middle. It's the heart chakra, and they have at the top of this mountain, there's a beautiful church and castle, but they have this walk-in baptismal pool with now a fountain in the middle of it. And of course my husband suggested that people should go in and have the baptismal experience. And Sigrun and all of the Norwegians and all of the Scandinavians who were with us on that trip thought, "Yay, what a good idea." And they went for it. And actually, as I remember, Sigrun got absolutely drenched. But it's a very special place.
yes, and it would have to be the Norwegians swimming, the Scandinavians, because in May it's not warm. And Marvaux is on the top of a hill.
Yes.
Not a hill, a mountain. It is freezing up there.
Okay,
It
it's
is.
not conducive for swimming
No,
naturally.
no.
Yeah.
So anyway, her Norwegian friend who had invited her was waiting for her in Sagres because they wanted to go and see the church in Sagres
Okay.
and the old fort there because her friend felt very drawn to that place and they were going to go meditate there. And I said, oh, that sounds interesting. To me, it was a pilgrimage that was really setting me off. I drive her to the train station and we're chatting about just logistics. And I said, what time are you getting in to Lagos? How long is the train journey, even though you've now cut out an hour and a half or something? She said, I'll get there at 9 o'clock tonight. I said, oh my God, it was midday.
Oh my.
And just to interrupt, that noise now are the storks.
Yeah, it's a
Oh
story.
yeah, the wonderful. That was amazing.
The
Sorry to
cla- the
interrupt as well, but
clacking.
there are two. Just to describe it, because you obviously can't see it. There's a very high pole, and there's a big nest, isn't there, with two storks? And you were saying you're hoping for a baby this year. That there'll be a baby
Or
stork.
two, hopefully.
Yes.
There was another couple that had the nest, but then one of them died. They were too old to have eggs. They had eggs the first year I got here, and they had babies, and then after that they didn't. And I think they were just too old. And then one of them died because they're always in pairs. And there was one up there alone for a while, and then that one died. And then since they left, new storks have taken over.
Oh, okay. So new owners for the stork house.
and I think they're young.
Oh, good.
But the clacking is the
clacking is the sound of their.
The clacking is their mating call.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
And we hasten to add that we have some pine trees between us, so they'll have a little privacy and everything will be fine.
Even though they're at the top
Yeah.
of a pole.
So, are you still in the car at this point?
I'm just dropping her at the train station and she tells me it's going to be 9 more hours until she gets to the south. Now, I know you can drive from the top of Portugal to the bottom in around that time. So we're halfway. I'm like, oh my God, that's such a long time. And I said to Sigrun, all my appointments were cancelled. I was going to be exploring Portugal. Why don't I drive you? It's 5.5 hours. It'll save you a lot of time. And she said, sure. So off I went. I met her friend Ranghild and another lovely woman. And so I was telling them about what I was doing, that I was planning to look for a place and this and that and the other, and have people come to stay and do a little mini retreats. And Sigrun said, I want to do the same thing. And she was retiring from her job as a teacher in the, help me out, alternative. It's not Montessori, it is
Steiner.
Steiner, thank you.
All together now.
Yes,
The menopause
in
power.
unison.
Yes, Steiner, exactly. And so there was a lot of synchronicity in terms of our interests. I'm going to look for a place. That's why I'm here. And so we started to chat. She said she was too. And I said, halfway down to Lagos now, we have a long journey. We stop for lunch. We have a lot of time to chat. And we figure out that we want to do the same thing. So I said, why don't we actually think about doing this together, buying a place together, because when you go back, you have children and grandchildren, I have a daughter. When we need to go back to our respective countries,
Smart.
then the other person can watch the property. And she said, great idea. That's how we started to connect on another level. And then we ended up looking for a place together. And we were looking at ruins while we were in the south.
Oh, yeah.
And there was nothing around. It was really awful. It was all really terrible stuff. And then her friend Ranghild got all excited because of our enthusiasm. And she said, I want to join you too. At which point it was like, God, 3 of us now.
Yeah.
But she was not looking for ruins. She said, I've already done renovations. I do not want anything I have to renovate. And we were out and about with this broker. And she said to the broker, I want to see something that can fit all of us and that we can at least live in, even if it needs fixing up. And he said, it's out of your budget. And she said, no, I'm joining them, so the budget's gone up. He showed us his place and we went along for the journey. I didn't really think that Ranghild was that serious because it was on the spur of a moment, and she has a husband who would have needed to have been part of the whole process.
Small blockers there, right?
Exactly. And we pull up into this place and I step out and there's a spider sculpture right beside me, a small one. And the motif in my jewelry, I was a jewelry designer in New York, it was a spider. It's my whole, and I love webs, and there are lots of symbolic reasons. But here's a spider right beside my door as I step out, and then the guy shows us around, the broker, and I see the well, and the well spoke to me, like really spoke to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is an amazing place. this place.
Yes.
Yes. And we ended up leaving. Ranghild ended up falling out of the whole equation. She said her husband wasn't interested or whatever. And at that point, it was totally out of my range, out of my and Sigrun's range. And then I thought, I'd lay in bed for about a week thinking, how is this going to, this is calling me. And it's all started to fall into place. And so I called Sigrun, wherever she was. I said, listen, if I can pull the rest of it together, are you still in? And she said, yes. And so I said, okay, I'm going to make an offer. And I did, and it was accepted. And so the two of us ended up getting this place.
Amazing.
And then after about 4 months, Sigrun realized she was homesick. COVID had just started. Everyone was terrified out of their minds. And we had complete chaos going on. And she said, I want you to buy me out. You can take some time, a few years, but I need to go home. And I was like, I didn't sign up for something like this. But then that's how I ended up with this place.
Amazing.
Yeah, and for the first few years, the first 3 years, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I had a huge flood. And when I tell you inundation, it was up to my thighs, the water.
Wow.
I was... But I didn't get to how... What happened was, when I heard about this pilgrimage, Sigrun was talking about the people who had created the pilgrimage, namely Jonathan and Tara.
Oh.
And so, when we ended up buying the place, in the first 6 weeks after we bought it, they came to Portugal, so we met them. And that was like an instant connection, and it was like, oh, the tribe is coming together, the fairies.
But you also missed that Ranghild's married to my cousin.
Yes. There's
Literally golden web, these threads of connection.
Amazing.
And then we came to visit you. You said, oh, come, and we wanted to see it. And of course, because we wanted Sigrun was super excited, and so was Ranghild, even though she'd backed out. And we drove in, and I turned to Todd and went, but we've been here before. And I think you might have thought this was in a past life. And I'm like, no.
This lifetime, quite recently.
In this lifetime, because with all of this construction work, I imagine that there's not much of it left, but there was a lot of stained glass windows around the house. And it was actually when Casa Fuseta was being renovated, our builder had found, I don't know whether he knew them already, but anyway, a Dutch couple, and his profession pre-retirement was restoring the stained glass windows of various cathedrals in the north of Europe. And he had brought whatever was left of this cathedral glass down to Golden Web. And it was the first thing at Casa Fuseta that was restored. And so we had come here to choose the glass. And it was really extraordinary, all of these connections, most definitely. But I'm going to hand back to Anna to pick up on the story. And maybe you tell us, your original vision for Golden Web. Because for me, even though it's been a while, I feel that now that your original vision is coming into action, that actually the flow is really coming.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to create a place of healing, of transformation and wholeness. And so where people could come and stay in this oasis and do whatever work they needed to do and connect on a really profound level. And so there was just a lot of energetic stuff happening here as well that's why I really feel the land called me. Even the cistern that's in the back, the first time I saw it, it felt like a vortex. And the well felt like this sacred body of water, and every person who's connected, who has walked in there, feels it. So for me, it was about being the caretaker of this place that would allow other people, healers, to come here and do their work, other people to come here and get healed. I wanted to do something really integrated. We're living in harmony with the land, so people can see how easy it is to actually exist in harmony with the land. I've never farmed in my life. I like to say I grew up on a farm. I didn't really. My grandparents had one, but I don't think they ever planted anything themselves.
Actually, it would be really helpful, because I think for me, this is my first visit here, and I think describing coming into the property and how much you're doing, just briefly, I think it would be really helpful to get a kind of visual on what the place looks like and what your vision is. It's a little different to Oliao and Casa Fuseta, and it's very much in the landscape and something that you're trying to reclaim through planting of trees and so on. Am I getting the...
Yes, I could have purchased something that was already planted, already vegetated, what have you. I mean, because I also love that look. But then I really do feel that we humans have deforested this planet, and it's our duty to reforest. And if I could do my little bit with maybe 1,000 trees at the end, when I'm finished, then at least I've done my little bit. We hear about people planting thousands of trees all the time, but that makes it impossible for the average person, someone with a backyard, or even even if they're in an apartment building, say a pavement area, where they can actually plant and nurture a tree. For me, I wanted to also show people how easy it is to grow vegetables. And it's hit or miss. Yes, there's been a lot that's died, but a lot has lived.
There's a lot living. And you also said to leave, what was your phrasing? I want to leave the world a little better than I found it?
Yes.
Which you can definitely see looking around here.
Thank you.
And just, I think for, again, people who aren't getting the benefit of seeing it themselves, you talked about the well, and when I heard about the well, I had this vision of a small well that's out the back that you pull up a pan of water, and that's that. This is a much bigger well. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it's huge.
It's colossal.
You can walk into it.
Yes, you can walk. You walk down. I did count the steps, but I'm terrible with numbers, so I've forgotten. But I think it's maybe about 12 to 15 steps you walk down, big proper steps.
Through a stone structure, right?
Yes, through this huge stone circle. And then you get to a platform, and at the end of the platform normally is where the water starts. Right now we've had a lot of rain. It's this giant structure, but it always has water. Even when Portugal is claiming that they're going to have water lock-offs and the dams are running out, the well is full.
Fantastic. And it's connected to an aqueduct?
In the old days, for agriculture, what they did was that they connected it to an aqueduct, and they built this big structure around so they could put donkeys on top to pull the water up. The donkeys would walk around all day with these buckets on a wheel, and then the water would travel along the aqueduct to the cistern, so they'd have water all year. In the dry season, the cistern would be full, because in the rainy season they'd fill it, and then they would be able to continue agriculture all year round, which was smart behavior. I don't think they've practiced that in Portugal for hundreds of years now. No one's really storing water.
Oh.
But you were saying earlier that some of the local archaeologists had been here and think there are elements that date back to the Roman era, but you're pretty convinced it goes further back even than that.
It would have to, because it's a natural water source. The Phoenicians were here, and the Phoenicians were also known for well building, but obviously on a much smaller scale. And the Romans never discovered anything. They came to a place and they basically captured whatever existed and then improved upon it. And so this well would have been here, and so the stones at the base are indicating that they're Roman. My guess is that they just built it up. They just reinforced it. It was probably a mud hole originally when the Phoenicians came. And
now you're the steward of this amazing space.
Yes.
And it's still doing its job in terms of water and supporting the growing on the land, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely. It also, there's a huge aquifer underneath here, and that's another thing, the element of water. And we're now in the age of Aquarius, and the element of water is all about healing and all about reconnecting to source. And that's why I think it's such a powerful place for the type of healing. I really want to attract more and more healers who are doing really profound work. There's so much trauma on this planet. People have lived through so much trauma, and on so many levels. And there's so much healing to be done, and I want a lot of that to be done here. And I want to, because it's a nurturing, loving place, and it can sustain that. It can hold space for that.
And you've got a vision for this space, this forest, this pine space that we're in, for people that they stay here, don't they?
They do. I put up glamping tents in the summertime, and they stay underneath the trees. And people have told me it's the best sleep they've ever had, because they're connected to the earth.
Yes.
There's sand between them and some cotton rugs, so they're all deeply connected energetically to the land. And the location is also really great because if you can't get too intense, if you get too intense on this stuff, then you can blow your mind out. I'm a 2-kilometer bike ride from Fuseta beach and the village.
Yeah.
So when they need to actually go and do what a normal human stuff, they can jump on bicycles and off they go, or take a walk and go to the beach. And the salt flats, which are actually in between the village and me.
Fabulous.
So there's a lot for them to take a breath.
Yes, that's a great description of it.
And do you get to take a breath?
I do now that I have a dog.
Oh,
Yeah.
the cutest dog, Momo.
She makes me take a break.
She's very
Yeah.
sweet. What kind of dog? She's white and fluffy.
She's-
Very white and fluffy, like fuzzy like the microphones.
She's a miniature wolf in lamb's clothing. So she's a half Maltese, half Bichon.
Oh, yeah. If you find that she's maybe away after this session
Oh.
today, you'll know I've stuffed her into my pocket and
You want
taken
to
her
borrow?
home. She's so cute.
At the moment, it would be fair to say that Golden Web is undergoing a bit of a transformation. There's quite a lot of building work going on at the moment, hence the background of lorries occasionally. But most of the trees are already planted. Last summer, or maybe the summer before that, created these beautiful natural ponds, swimming areas in various locations across the property. And so you're going to be up for and running for business and welcoming guests again from spring 2026.
Definitely 2026. We'll be able to accommodate. We have a few retreats this summer.
Oh, yes.
In the tents. So that will accommodate some. And then the 3 units will be finished in May. So I'm counting on somewhere in the summer.
Oh, okay.
that we'll have 3 units ready to go. And then the other ones will start right away, but they won't be finished for another 6 months or so.
Okay.
That will take us to next year for everything to be done. So it'll be a very soft launch because it's not ideal to have construction going on next door if you're coming here to.
But if you're brave and you like
Oh,
what
yeah.
you've heard, and you might even be up for mucking in, we'll include links to the Golden Web. You've got a website, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yes, and there's certainly an Instagram. So we'll add lots of bits and pieces in the show notes. But I think Kate wants to ask one last question.
No, I'm just sitting here marveling at the fact that you have arrived in this place and now at a point of more creation and more growth, from having the courage to say, hey, can I come and hang out with you and take the garbage to the bin? And then from there you took, again, a big chance just jumping in a car because you had a good feeling about something and about someone. I'm not suggesting that people do this without some sense. I think Anna was sensible about her
Don't
traveling.
follow
Don't
our
do this at home,
lead.
kids. I mean, and definitely take your phone and make sure that, but generally you had the courage to take a leap, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And that leap has landed you very firmly grounded in a wonderful place, moving on to the next chapter, doing what you want to do. And I'm sure it's clearly you've had challenges, whether it's flooding or construction or COVID or all of those things, but you are absolutely embracing and doing what you want to do and helping other people to heal in a way that you want to. It's pretty remarkable.
Well, thank you.
It's
you.
wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Steiner teachers are not known for being risky.
Yeah.
You know, jumping in the car with a Steiner teacher, you know. But it's no.
Yeah,
but
she's
also,
a pretty good bet. I'd agree with that.
Yes. But also, I've never been happier in my life. So for me, it's obvious that I'm on the right path. I've had lots of different iterations of myself in this lifetime, but this is really the happiest I've ever been. It feels right.
I'm definitely looking forward to coming back and seeing all the growth. It's really exciting to see all the trees, and it'll be a neat conclusion.
Season 3.
Season
Stay
3.
tuned. That's probably a good place to end. Thank you,
Okay,
Anna.
great.
so much,
Thank
Anna.
you. Thank
So
you.
nice to meet you, and thank you for the delicious cookies.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
As ever, we've included links in the show notes so that you can deep dive further into the elements we touched on in this episode. And we'd love to hear what you think of this second series and whether you'd like us to do a third. You can find a dedicated email address in the show notes where you can send us your thoughts and your suggestions. And last but definitely not least, we'd be hugely grateful for a 5-star rating and your help in spreading the word with your family and friends. Oh.
At the proxima. No, I'm going to say at the proxima because it's been a wonderful experience and I'm pretty sure we're going to get great feedback and do a third one.
Yay! Thank you, everybody, for staying with us up until this point. We love you.
We do.